It was remarkable because I got to see community emergency medicine as well as inner city emergency medicine. And what I loved about it, Randy, was that you never knew at any moment of your 12-hour shift what might be coming through the door.
Paging Dr. Cook. Paging Dr. Cook. Dr. Cook, you're wanted in the OR. Dr. Cook, you're wanted in the OR.
Welcome to the Prescription for Success podcast with your host, Dr. Randy Cook.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Prescription for Success. I'm Dr. Randy Cook, your host for the podcast, which is a production of MD Coaches, providing leadership and executive coaching for physicians by physicians. To overcome burnout, transition your career, develop as a leader, or whatever your goal might be, visit MD Coaches on the web at mymdcoaches.com, because you're not in this alone. My guest today started his career in medicine as an eager and optimistic emergency room physician, but gradually he started to feel something was missing. And then, after some very serious soul-searching, he decided to hit restart on his career, and soon he became one of the pioneers in a new approach to healthcare called Integrative Medicine. So let's hear Dr. Russel Greenfield tell his story. It's a great pleasure for me today to be talking with Dr. Russel Greenfield, who is coming to us from Bentonville, Arkansas today. Russ, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Oh, Randy, what a privilege for me. Thank you.
Well, you're very kind, and I know that you have some familiarity with our podcast, and surely you know that I'm going to ask you to tell me a little bit about your very beginning, and that's exactly right. You were born in Pennsylvania, near Abingdon, Pennsylvania, near Philadelphia, right?
Indeed.
And is that where you did most of your growing up?
No, my wife likes to say that she married a gypsy. I was born in Pennsylvania, spent a few months in Florida, just about 10 years in Connecticut, a little more than 6 years on Long Island, college outside of Boston, med school in Chicago, initial training in Los Angeles, settled in North Carolina, 4 years in Arizona, back to North Carolina, and now in Arkansas. I like to tell folks, I'm just running from the law. It's all good.
So you really did do a lot of getting around.
I did.
And I suspect, having heard that it was unlikely that you grew up in a medical family.
It's true. Actually, my dad's employment was actually in the computer industry, and because of that in engineering, he had multiple opportunities. And so my poor brother, he had to shift schools quite a number of times. I only had to do so once at the end of fifth grade, but I will tell you that was not an easy transition for me, and I still remember it.
Yeah, I bet you do. So where then did the influence to study medicine come about?
I appreciate you asking the question because it's actually a seminal moment in my life. My brother is 8 years older than I. And when I was 10 years old, my brother was in a very, very bad car accident. And as a 10-year-old, I didn't really understand everything that was going on. I just knew that around 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, I was wakened from sleep, and my mom, dad, and I went to the local emergency department where I heard my brother calling out. And I just remember us finally going upstairs, my brother going to the intensive care unit, and my mom, dad, and I in a darkened waiting area where there was a little bit of light coming in from the hallway. Again, I didn't understand all that was going on. All that I knew is that my mom and dad were embracing, and it was the first time in my life I had seen my.
Wow.
Fast forward 3 months later, my brother is able to leave the hospital and everybody's really happy. And in my simple mind of a 10-year-old, I thought, wow, how cool would that be if you could take people from being really sad to being really happy? And that was my first inkling that maybe I would have the opportunity to participate in.
That's a great story. And when you enrolled in undergrad at Brandeis University, was that the intention at that time?
It was. And I must tell you, however, that during freshman year, I explored political science classes and sociology, and I started thinking maybe there's more to this than just science. And I started looking far afield and finally came back, so much so that where everybody else was a biology major or a chemistry major, suddenly I found myself junior year being a psychology major, having never taken a psychology course, and realizing I better figure this out quickly, and was fortunate to be able to graduate with a degree in general science.
Well, that's a pretty good story. And, I have to tell you that I'm a little bit older than you, but at the time that I enrolled in medical school, they were saying, we really want you to have a broad-based liberal arts education. It sounds like that's exactly what you got. Do you think it really benefited you later on or not?
If I had planned it, it would have been one thing, Randy, but I think I was simply very fortunate because I think you and I and those of our fortunate peers, I think the majority of us were called to the healing profession through the humanities. Mm-hmm. And I think part of the shame of that is that if we are fortunate enough to be accepted into whatever professional school that we might be engaged in the profession for the rest of our careers, we really never touch on those humanities again unless it's on our free time.
Oh, that's so true. I think that
is one of the failings of medical training these days is that we get called to it through heart and humanities, and yet almost all of the training has to do with the hard sciences.
And I'll bet we're going to come back to that some more when we talk about integrative medicine. Back to medical school, when you got there, did you feel like I'm really in the right place, or did you have any misgivings along the way? What was medical school like for you?
So again, I was a very fortunate person because, chemistry, biology, organic chem, some of those courses were interesting to me in undergraduate school, but they didn't necessarily really grab me. But I really was grabbed by medical school. I loved the majority of the coursework and the experience, and I really loved my classmates. So I had the unusual experience, I would say, of medical school that I really enjoyed it. Not everybody says that.
Yeah, you're so right about that. In fact, I get a lot of people that say, well, those first 2 years were a real struggle, but after I started seeing patients, it got better. And I hear stories like that, but rarely do I hear anybody say, beginning to end, I knew exactly that I was in the right place.
Well, the learning, just the amazing, the magic of the human body, and to just, hear how things actually work. And then, Randy, you might harken back to, remember getting medical student disease, which was everything we learned. We were like, well, I had that symptom. I had that symptom. And, you'd go through all this going, how is it that the human body even stays healthy at all with all the potential pitfalls and downfalls? And so, again, it speaks to just the magic, the inherent magic of the human body. And then to be engaged in the opportunity to try and help people facilitate their innate capacity to heal, taking advantage of those gifts of healing that we're all born with, together with the best of conventional medical care. Well, simply put, it's an unbelievable privilege.
So true. So, sounds like medical school was very enjoyable. And then the next step was picking what was going to be your postgraduate training. And indeed, you took yourself right back to where you got the inspiration. You went back to the emergency room.
That's really interesting. Here I am, 63 years old, and I never put that together, Randy. That's kind of funny.
I'm not even going to bill you for that.
Thank you. years prior to medical school, I knew in my heart of hearts that I wanted to return to a small town. I grew up in Connecticut. It was a very small town. I wanted to return to a small town and be the small town family doctor and just be friends with my patients, know the community, help people from birth to end of life and everything in between. And I knew that's what I wanted to do. And I was in my second year of medical school, I had the opportunity to participate in an elective about emergency medicine. And I was really engaged. I was really interested, but I was like, no, I'm going into family medicine. And I couldn't wait because my very first rotation, my third year of medical school, was family medicine. So I knew this was going to, be foundational. It was going to cement my path forward. And I really did not enjoy my family medicine rotation.
Really?
And I was like, holy moly. And really
tell me some more about that. What went wrong?
Yeah. The family medicine doc that I worked with was actually quite wonderful and in many ways ahead of his time. I just didn't understand it. And so in part, he was an osteopath. And about 80% of the work that he did was manual care of people coming through his doors, which I had no prior experience of and didn't really understand what he was doing. And then a significant proportion of the rest of the work that he did was really more medical triage. So in a very simplistic way, it seemed to me, again, with a, the beginner's mind of sorts, but also a very judgmental one at that time, was he might see somebody with mild chest discomfort and make a referral to the cardiologist, or somebody with a little bit of abdominal discomfort and make the referral to the gastroenterologist, not doing a whole lot of care himself. And that bothered me. I wanted to do more of the getting down into the weeds of trying to help people decipher what's actually going on, try and get into the diagnostic aspect. And again, having had no background in the manual therapies, which now I wish I'd paid much more attention to, I was concerned that maybe this isn't my calling after all.
With that bit of confusion going on, what was it later on in medical school that made you think the emergency room was the place to find where you really wanted to be?
Well, having had that experience with primary care and feeling like, gosh, this isn't the place where I really might be able to intervene, I started taking electives in emergency medicine around the country. So I did an elective in Harlem in New York City, an elective in Akron, Ohio, an elective in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and an elective in Denver, Colorado.
That's quite an experience.
It was remarkable because I got to see community emergency medicine as well as inner city emergency medicine. And what I loved about it, Randy, was that you never knew at any moment of your 12-hour shift what might be coming through the door. Yeah. And so you had to be ready at any given moment to intervene. And you might have 11 hours of colds and sniffles and things like that. And at 11 and a half hour mark, there might be a vehicular trauma with multiple victims, or gunshot wound, or a heart attack, or a stroke, or the opportunity to deliver a baby. And the emergency physicians struck me as they had to be prepared for all of that and also know how to deal with just the run-of-the-mill kind of urgent care things that might come through the door as well. And that just struck me as just the sheer breadth of knowledge that was necessary, and the ability to act on it in short form was both really challenging to me, but also really compelling to me.
Yeah, I should think that that experience would get the attention of most any medical student, and I think it probably does. There are parts of it, obviously, that some people don't find so inviting, but the immediate gratification part, I think, is very appealing, and obviously it appealed to you. And you not only did an internship year and a couple of residency years, but an additional fellowship, which according to your CV was also in emergency medicine. What was that extra year about?
It was really a wonderful year because I had plans to enter academics. And so had the opportunity to, really learn from wonderful mentors what it means to have the privilege of standing before an audience and trying to share information that they might find beneficial, to serve in that way, to say, I learned this and I think this might be a benefit to you. And to, just learn the craft, I guess, of doing my best to be a teacher as well as a practitioner. And so I was surrounded by wonderful, wonderful mentors and had the opportunity to work with residents in a different way that really gave me the opportunity to think, I think I really want to go the academics route.
Mm-hmm. It sounds a lot like what we refer to as the chief residence year in surgical training.
Actually, it's very much like what it was, indeed.
You become more of a mentor as well, which is very satisfying.
Hi, I'm Rhonda Crow, founder and CEO for MD Coaches. Here on RX for Success, we interview a lot of great medical professionals on how they grew their careers, how they overcame challenges, and how they handle day-to-day work. I really hope you're getting a lot of great information. But if you're looking for an answer to a specific problem, management or administration challenge, or if you're feeling just a bit burnt out, like maybe you chose the wrong career, well, then there's a faster way to get the help you need. No, it's not counseling, it's coaching. RX for Success is produced by MD Coaches, a team of physicians who have been where you are. I know you're used to going it alone, but you don't have to. Get the support you need today. Visit us at mymdcoaches.com to schedule your complimentary consultation. Again, that's mymdcoaches.com, because you're not in this alone.
We'll get back to our interview in just a moment, but right now I want to tell you a little bit about Physician Outlook. If you haven't discovered this remarkable magazine, please do so very soon. It was created by physicians for physicians to showcase the intersection between clinical and non-clinical interests, whether it's writing, painting, cooking, politics, and dozens of other topics. Physician Outlook gives a physician perspective. It's available online and in print. It's really unique among physician lifestyle magazines. And like the Prescription for Success podcast, Physician Outlook amplifies the voice of any physician who has something to say. It also engages patients who still believe in physician-led, team-based care. And Prescription for Success listeners can get 3 months free when you enter our promo code RX for Success and select the monthly option at checkout. That's a really great deal on this stunning publication. And now let's get back to today's interview. But then when you finish, there's a bit of a gap between that and your Integrative Medicine fellowship, and I'm really interested in what happened there. You clearly did some decision making in that 8 or 9 years. Were you in a more or less sort of standard emergency room practice doing shift work during those years, or what was your life like?
So it's a wonderful question, because I feel like my answer has some depth about it that speaks to, I guess, who I am, which I hope will inform folks with regards to some of the decisions that people may have the chance to make for themselves. Again, Randy, I honestly don't know anybody more fortunate than myself. I often share with people that my story, if written, really couldn't be necessarily, it might be understood, but it wouldn't be believable. And so I started out working with a private emergency medicine group in North Carolina. I had the opportunity to stay on faculty in my residency training, but wanted to get closer to my family in North Carolina. And so returned to North Carolina. They didn't have an academic job available at the time, but they were working with a private emergency medicine group that was helping to provide some of the oversight for the residents, and also you could participate in the residency program training. So I signed up with them and had a wonderful experience for 4 years before one of my mentors in emergency medicine, a gentleman by the name of John Marks, came and became the chairperson of the emergency medicine program. And so I then shifted and joined the academic department of emergency medicine and started really being more engaged in the oversight of not only just the care, but the training of the residents, getting more involved in presentations around the country and writing and all that comes with it. And then a funny thing happened. I got married. And when I did, I realized, all this work that you have to do, publish or perish or things like that, is taking me away from the woman that I love. And how do I put all this together? And I finally came to the understanding, simply for myself, not for anybody else, that I really wanted to spend more time at home and that I might have to say so long to academics after all. So I was very fortunate then to be offered the position of directorship of a community emergency department where I was living, and so left academics to pursue a role where I could both provide clinical care and be an administrator. There, what I discovered is that the clinical exposure in a community emergency department is very, very different from the types of patients seen in a level 1 trauma center residency program.
So true.
And so there, my challenge was that there wasn't the same breadth and the same degree of challenge necessarily day in, day out in the community emergency department as there was working with brilliant residents and teachers and being the level 1 trauma center. And then the administrative work simply wasn't quite as fulfilling as I thought it might be. But I thought, again, I am one lucky critter. I've got a great job. I'm happily married with 2 munchkins and diapers. My family's nearby. I have a pretty good gig, and I'm going to be very fortunate doing this for the rest of my career. Until I was returning from giving a lecture for the American College of Emergency Physicians, and my plane was delayed. And this is why I say, Randy, you couldn't write the story and make it believable. And so I'm just scanning the magazine, columns, rows, and I come across this magazine where there's a gentleman with a bald pate and white hair, or just around his ears, all covered in mud, holding onto a plant. And the cover story is, "Can this guy change medicine?" And so I picked it up and I'm looking through it, and I'm Jewish. And the reason why I mentioned that is at the very top of the magazine, it also says they have a story on Jews across America. And I'm thumbing through and they call my plane. And I never buy magazines at the airport, like never. But I was like, well, I'll just pick this up. And so I put it in my backpack, head home to my wife and munchkins, and I'm going through my backpack and I take out the magazine. Well, it's one of these magazines that is primarily pictures. So I'm just thumbing through them. But then there's this article about this fellow, Dr. Andrew Weil, and how he and his colleagues at the University of Arizona are starting a brand new fellowship program where the stated purpose of the Integrative Medicine program is to right the ship of healthcare and make it actually be about health. Now, that really appealed to me because at the time, again, being very fortunate, having a wonderful job, I couldn't help but notice in my shifts in the emergency department, I was one of the only people happy there. The patients were certainly unhappy. The nursing staff, chronically understaffed, were unhappy. The doctors that we would call in the middle of the night, very unhappy. Administrators, typically pretty unhappy. Insurance companies, very unhappy. And I'm looking around going, something is wrong here. And then many of the patients that we would take care of, oftentimes they had received excellent physical care for their physical maladies. But in many ways, it was really only Band-Aid care because it never touched on the other aspects of health and well-being. And if I might, I share one patient encounter that was really informative to me, but only in retrospect because I missed it up front. And that's just being honest. So it was one of those famous 3 to whenever shifts. And so it was a little after 1:30 in the morning when I picked up a chart, and I did exactly the wrong thing, Randy. The chart said flare of rheumatoid arthritis. And so it was maybe a 50-ish year old young lady who was on multiple medications and was experiencing flare of her joint pain. And as I was walking to the room, I was already deciding what I might offer for her and doing exactly the wrong thing. And so when I entered the room, I introduced myself and I said, how might I be of service? And I usually used my first name. And she said, well, Russ, I've had rheumatoid arthritis for 15 years. I've been on methotrexate in the past. I've been on gold in the past. I've been on this, on this. And she looked at me again. This is 1:30 in the morning. She says, and I want you to fix me now. And I was...
It's not too much to ask, right?
Well, I was quite surprised. And I was like, whoa. And so we sat and we talked for a little while. And I don't remember exactly what I did, but I probably, increased her steroids and saw if I could get her into the rheumatologist's office in rapid fashion. But the next day when I was thinking back on my shift, I realized I had missed it. Because honestly, thank goodness she didn't have a fever. She really didn't have significant swelling. Her urgency, if you will, really wasn't her physical malady at the time. In retrospect, I think what was going on is she was having a different kind of urgency, maybe even emergency, which was more along the lines of, this really stinks. I can't get control over this. It's impacting my life. And here at 1:30 in the morning, I need somebody to witness and validate what I'm going through and give me some sense of hope for the future. And I missed it. And I'd like to believe that I am somebody who cares about people and can connect in a meaningful way. However, what I really was looking at there was expediting the process and trying to take care of as many people as I could. And that's when I realized that I had lost my way. And that was never how I was prior to going to medical school. And so it led me to thinking about this, how do we make healthcare really about health question? And so I was really intrigued by the offering of the Integrative Medicine Initiative. But I will share with you, again, going back to my own shortcomings here, is when I looked at the application, I distinctly looked for, are they going to ask me about myself? Is this about psychology and stuff like that? Because at the time, Randy, honestly, I believed I eat stress. That's why I'm an emergency physician. This is what I go on. This is my juice. I don't need any of that stuff. So if it's that kind of program, I'm not even interested. But it wasn't there. And so I applied and interviewed on Valentine's Day, 1997. And a week later, was fortunate to be given the opportunity to matriculate in the program.
So I want to explore a little bit of what I find really fascinating and really courageous about what you just said. This was profoundly new territory at the time. In fact, I think we could probably agree that it still is in a state of emergence. But this is something that you elected to do at a time when very few people were talking about it. And to me, it causes me to point out that you really are quite a pioneer. You're probably too modest to admit that, but it's a big step at the point of your career when you made that decision. And I'm curious, very curious about what was going on around you. Were there people coming up to you saying, Russ, you might be off your rocker a little bit. Are you sure you want to go do this voodoo stuff? This is way outside the lines. What were you hearing from the people around you, and what effect did it have on you?
Well, Randy, I just broke into a smile because I heard that word voodoo more than once during those days. And I thank you for being so kind and assessing me at that time. But really and truly, I really do mean this. This is not false modesty. I was really lucky because in some ways I didn't know what I was getting into. What I was looking for was to say, there's got to be more. And I don't like the arrogance of conventional medicine to say that things like acupuncture or herbs or things that have been used through traditional healthcare for millennia couldn't possibly be a benefit to our patients. I wanted to see where's the science and how can we apply it and how can we use this to make healthcare better for folks. And so I went in very naively because I was in the very first class of the program back in 1997. So there was no background information about it. It was, could we, as the first class, could we participate in a way that might actually contribute for others? And so it was that, nascent desire to be a part of a movement rather than a new field of medicine that really kind of called to me. And one of the things that was, compelling about it was hard to figure out what actually integrative medicine was at the time. In fact, I'll share a story in just a moment about how that came full circle for me. But when I announced to my emergency medicine group that I was leaving and what I was going to leave for, I would say 9 out of 10 of my colleagues really did think, Russ, you have lost your mind. You have this amazing job and you're going to go do what? And so most of my peers were looking a little askance at me and frankly were a little worried about my wife and kids. But there were a small number of folks who said, Russ, I wish I could do what you're about to do, which left me thinking, well, you could. It's just, we often believe we're stuck even though we're not. And so I had the good fortune to simply explore. But I was literally, there's nothing less than this word. I was blessed with having a wonderful wife who literally said to me, Russ, you haven't starved us yet. Let's do whatever you need to do. And so we moved out to Arizona with 2 munchkins under 2 years of age, and started a new life out there. And so it was intriguing, Randy, for a number of different reasons, not the least of which is I was looking simply for evidence and data and how this could be rolled into conventional medicine. I knew the program was not about me. Little to find out is that, a few months in, to learn that indeed, in many ways, the program really is about me. Because I suddenly found out that, even though I thought I lived and breathed stress and stress management, I found, oh my goodness, I'm just like everybody else. But that informed everything because then I had a different way of engaging with people where we could have shared vulnerabilities and shared dreams and thereby create a partnership rather than some hierarchical relationship. And that really changed everything. And I will say that it started very, very early. The second day of the fellowship program, we were, there were only 4 of us in the program at that time. We were kind of like the beta test. And our presenter one morning was a professor of virology. He studied viruses. But he was also somebody who was very interested in the philosophy of science. And he was giving us a presentation on paradigm shifts because he put forth to us that we were engaged in nothing less than a paradigm shift. That shift being to make healthcare really and truly about health rather than disease management. Mm-hmm. So he spoke to us about Copernicus and Galileo, and we studied these philosophers. And then he said, I want to put forth a philosophy for you guys that I adhere to. And his philosophy was that there are 3 forms of knowledge. He said there's belief, there's opinion, and there's fact. And we had the opportunity to reflect on that for a moment. He said, so you guys, let's just assume that to be true for the moment. Give me a fact. Now, remember, Randy, we were all really nervous. We didn't know what we were doing. What's a fact? I don't know. And somebody said, the earth is round. He goes, great. That's really good. We actually have really good data that the earth is round. We've got data from space. We have geologic data. We have mathematical data. The earth really is round. Then he paused and said, give me a fact in medicine. Now, remember, the 4 of us in that class, we had all been practicing medicine for some time. And yet here we were kind of like, what is he asking for? And so he let us off the hook and he said, well, let's put it this way. Let me give you an opportunity here. I study viruses. How about the HIV virus causes AIDS? And we were like, yeah. He goes, well, certainly strong association. But let me ask you something. Why, thank goodness, if the HIV virus causes AIDS, Are there so many people who are HIV positive but don't have AIDS? Maybe it's a protein that actually causes the disease, but it's only activated in the presence of a certain number of viruses. Maybe it's this, maybe it's that. And Randy, in that moment, everything changed for me because it went from the algorithmic model of healthcare, the linearity of each person and their health destiny, to the possibility that resides within each person, and that maybe the role of a healthcare practitioner, while certainly to take care of urgencies and emergencies and to do whatever they can to prevent illness in the first place, but it's also to facilitate the optimal functioning of the innate gifts of healing that each person was born with. And so everything shifted very early on for me, and I rediscovered my love for being in the healing arts.
That's really profound. So, what was it like that next 2 years? What, most of the people, well, I don't know. I was about to say most of the people who hear this podcast have been through fairly conventional training where you go to work, you make rounds, you discuss things with faculty, and you act on the best evidence and things of that nature. But you're entirely in new territory here. So I'm wondering what fellowship in integrative medicine looked like when you are face to face with the patient.
Well, early on, I actually had one of the instructors asked me, how the heck did you get into this program? Because I was really pretty well steeped in conventional medicine.
Sure.
Give me the evidence, and, a lot of this stuff is just hooey. Here, I thought I was pretty open-minded, Randy, but I had walked in without even recognizing it in myself, not as open-minded as I needed to be. And so I started exploring things because the first 2 months of the fellowship program, we didn't see any patients at all. They were simply setting the stage for us to consider things anew. Literally asking the question, well, if the body has the innate capacity to heal in many instances, what does a healthcare practitioner do? And I really, outside of, urgencies and emergencies, I had not considered that question. And, is there a healing system within each person, and how can we help that function optimally well? For the person who has had a heart attack over here and the person who's had a heart attack over here, why are their outcomes oftentimes so different? And the person who has, every one of us in healthcare has been presented with somebody who has a poor prognosis, and yet somehow has beaten that prognosis back. How does that happen? And why does it happen? And all too often what happens for us is we go, that's amazing. Congratulations. I need to go back to work. Instead of saying, how did they do that? What can we learn from them? And is it applicable to other people? So really what happened early on is I was getting my mind blown, and then trying to figure out, how do I take that experience and create a different kind of relationship when sitting across from folks where we're not unduly optimistic, but never taking away somebody's sense of hope.
That's so profound, and it really gives me chills to contemplate on the very things that you're talking about, and obviously it had a tremendous impact on you because you've embraced this new mindset, and you've done very well with it. And it leads me right into the next question, and that is, here you are, a fully trained physician, now trained in an area that has been overlooked for centuries, and now you got to go out into the world and sell it. So how did that happen? Eventually you got back to the Carolinas, and you were able to get this new methodology integrated into a very reputable healthcare system. How'd you do that?
I was again, just fortunate in ways that are almost unbelievable. So when I First was speaking with it was the healthcare system I had worked with previously. And literally one of the lead administrators said, Russ, what happened to you? Are you like shaking rattles now and holding crystals? What's going on?
Goodness.
But at the time, there was, in 1997, a seminal article was published in the New England Journal of Medicine showing that about 34% of the U.S. population was engaging in complementary, if not, frankly, alternative medicine. And the sheer number of dollars being spent out of pocket exceeded what was being spent through conventional means. So that got people paying attention because if for no other reason, if you're a healthcare system, you're looking, this could be another source of revenue. Beyond trying to help people, it might make business sense. So the administrators saw the opportunity for this. But when I came back to North Carolina, my peers were like, Russ, have you gone to the dark side? And so we would have conversations about this. And so where we won people over, my team and I initially, was that at least two things. You, my peers in the community, are especially primary care providers. You are trying to help people with certain maladies for which there's no prescription. And you may be at the end of your options with regards to how you're going to help this person. Those kinds of people send my way for my team and I, because we are using evidence-based interventions, whether they be Chinese medicine, whether they be mind-body interventions, whether they be this small number of trials at that time looking at select vitamins, supplements, and herbs. Whatever the case may be, that could be used in a way that might help patients. So we tried to share that, whether it was our peers or the patient population we were fortunate to serve. Too often the equation looks like either or. Either we're going to use conventional medicine or we're going to use these complementary alternative modalities. We try to take that either or and make it and. How can you safely take control where you can through diet and lifestyle measures and select complementary modalities together with the best of conventional medicine, all in service to your optimal health, but also to lessen your reliance on those conventional medical modalities? And then the second part, Randy, was engaging our colleagues in discussions about, hey, we need to keep our patients safe because there's a lot of stuff out there that actually isn't in their best interest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of wisdom in that. And it's a great credit to you that you were able to frame it in terms that really made sense. Obviously, there was a potential economic advantage. And as I was listening to you, it occurred to me how many times I have seen it happen. I actually did my very first clinical rotation as a medical student was in family practice. And I was reflecting on the number of patients that came through the office during that 2 months that I was there, again and again and again and again. Nothing changed. And yet we kept doing the same things again and again and again. But again, the reality that there might be some economic advantage was obviously something that would get the attention, and it did. And you were very successful with it in the Carolinas healthcare system, and now moving on to Bentonville and the Whole Health Institute. You want to tell us about how that came about?
Sure. So during those intervening years from 2001 until just this past year, I was very fortunate to be able to participate in a lot of different things. So I worked for Carolina's healthcare system. I worked for Novant Health. I worked for Wake Forest, all of them typically as consultants. I had my own one-day-a-week practice. I did consultancy with a large supermarket chain in the Mid-Atlantic, initially working on their community wellness initiatives and then subsequently on their employee wellness initiatives. I had the good fortune to consult with some remarkable entities, and also one of those being the VA system. So in 2012, the VA launched a program called Whole Health, and it was launched because at the time, the circumstances were dire around caring for veterans with chronic pain. The opioid crisis was in full swing, especially in the VA. There were folks on way too many medications. Comorbidities were rampant, and so were emotional and behavioral health issues. The VA recognized they had a problem, were open to bold new initiatives. And so, as it turns out, my program director at the University of Arizona Integrative Medicine program took over the reins at the VA of an integrative medicine initiative called Whole Health. And it was launched in early 2012, mainly through educational fora and experiential forums. And then it was launched actually to the patient population. And a significantly important aspect of this was that so much of it was peer-to-peer support amongst the veterans. It wasn't so much healthcare practitioners telling the veterans, you need to do this or you need to do that. It was offering them the opportunity to explore for themselves if they were going to embark on a journey of optimizing their health and well-being, where would they want to start? And then once they identified that starting point, how could we as their healthcare partners support them in doing so? Well, that all sounds very, very nice and maybe a little pie in the sky, except that their year-on-year outcomes show that the veterans really embraced the whole health approach. It was looking at, self-care strategies like diet and optimizing sleep and, trying to take care of themselves with environment and all. But it was also taking a look and seeing, okay, which healthcare team are you going to be working with? Is it your conventional doctor? We do have acupuncture. We have chiropractic. How do you create an individualized program for each person to get better? And then the other part of it that really drove things home, Randy, and you touched on it, is not only did the veterans benefit from it, but year on year, it saved 30% on the average expense for a veteran being cared for. This most recent year of 2020, the data coming back would suggest that when you control for certain variables, the savings were over 50%.
That's no surprise to me at all. I mean, I can remember my experience in the VA in my surgical clinics, and when the patients came in, they always had a bag full of medicine.
Right.
And that stuff's expensive. So it's pretty easy to put that two and two together. And I apologize for the interruption, but do go ahead.
No, I thank you for sharing that, because that's a lot of what you ended up seeing. But here the VA was taking a leadership position, not only, amongst the VA hospitals, but actually being able to show what might happen in the community. Keeping in mind that the VA is a capitated facility, here we are in the community moving towards value-based reimbursement. And the thought is, can the VA experience be extrapolated to be successful in the community as well? And that's really what the Whole Health Institute exists to do. So again, I want to go back to my good fortune because, again, it overflows. We are a not-for-profit entity funded through the largesse of Alice Walton of the Walton family and Walmart. Now, we exist separately from Walmart, but it is a not-for-profit set up through the vision of Alice Walton to see what can be done to transform healthcare for everybody. Now, the idea is really to focus in Northwest Arkansas initially because that's the home of the Waltons, and they love their community here, and they want to see what they can do to serve the people of their community, but all with the idea to make Northwest Arkansas a demonstration project that can be replicated around the country. So here at the Whole Health Institute, we have a number of verticals and horizontals, if you will. So the deployment arms are healthcare redesign and community outreach, and then the arm that I'm fortunate to oversee, which is employee whole health. And why I get excited about that, Randy, is while all the other entities that exist under this roof of whole health are wonderful and critically important components to transforming healthcare, I honestly believe that the area where we are most likely to rapidly move the needle, if we're able to do so, is going to be with businesses. And so when you take a look and see you've got 18 to 20% year-on-year increases in insurance costs, you have overages with the number of employees that businesses have to hire in order to make up for absenteeism. You've got the great resignation going on now. And so retention and recruitment is really important. And so what we're fortunate in finding out when I go out and meet with business leaders is I'm not going out to them saying, you need to care about your employees. We're going to take for granted that they do. But what I will go out and say to them is everything you care about from a businessman's perspective, productivity, profitability, retention, recruitment, absenteeism, presenteeism, reducing error rates, et cetera, all of those rely heavily upon the health and well-being of your employees. Do I think that we can create a return on investment for you by utilizing some of what we learned out of the VA? I do. But I'm also careful to say, Randy, we're not going out and saying we have the answer for you. Again, because of the way we are funded, we can go out to folks and say, you don't need to write us a check. We simply want to partner with you and think about together, could we come up with a solution that might bridge the gaps that you're experiencing and then share that with other businesses, all in service towards transforming our healthcare system and making it better for everyone.
Well, that is a brilliant, brilliant idea. And I can only imagine how proud you must feel that you made that decision back in, 2012? I've lost my notes.
It's unbelievable. And that's why I say you can't write this and make it believable. And so it's, I share with folks sometimes, and I don't mean to be goofy here, but I really do mean this. If I have discomfort at all about my present position, it is that the opportunity is so wonderful and so palpable. I simply want to make certain that I can meet the opportunity and, if not, exceed it in collaboration with my colleagues.
Yeah, I am looking back at my notes now, and it was actually back in 1997 when you made this decision to embrace integrative medicine. And when I think about the state of mind that we were in with respect to healthcare back then, you truly were way ahead of your time. And congratulations for sticking to your guns and helping bring us all to a better place, because I think that's exactly what you've done.
You're very kind, Randy. Thank you.
I have really enjoyed this conversation, and I want to move along at this point and give you an opportunity to speak to us, and I guarantee no interruptions. So I'm going to close my mic temporarily, and Dr. Russel Greenfield will give us his personal prescriptions for success.
So I want to, again, thank you for this opportunity, Randy. And it is honestly hard for me to speak about something like this topic about, my personal prescription for success, because I honestly think that success, however it is defined, I'm not going to claim it. I really leave that to others to decide, have I done with my life and my career what I had the opportunity to do or what I should have done. And I hope I will live up to that opportunity and merit opportunities like this, Randy, to be on your show. What I can do is share with listeners some things that at least have been important to me. And I think I may not have realized early on in my career as much as, or in my life, as I recognize now. So when I was thinking about this and reflecting on it, I came up with 3 words beginning with the letter S, as in Sam. And the first S is special, the second S is service, and the third S actually is Sabbath. And so I speak about special because the opportunity to interact with people in their hour of need is one of the things that I explored significantly when I was in emergency medicine. But I found also that when I had more time with people and could really sit down with them and talk about what it is they really wanted to do with their life if they were optimally well, and really explore issues of meaning, aspiration, and purpose, not being a psychologist, but just trying to get a lead about what my homework might be, it enriched my practice of medicine in ways that I couldn't even imagine. And when speaking with my colleagues about this, they say, well, Russ, that's impossible to do in this day of productivity standards and seeing as many patients per day as we have to. And what I shared with them was what I learned from many, many others. It's that sometimes it's simply an appropriate touch on the arm or the shoulder, or a caring statement, or an open-ended question that sends the message that we honestly care about you. We might not be able to take care of everything in these 15 minutes, But I want you to know that I'm here to be your partner because we're all engaged in this walk on this planet and we help one another. As has been said by many far smarter than myself, caring or treatment goes in one direction, but healing is bi-directional. And the opportunity to work with folks in that way from the healing arts perspective, we learn so much from our patients. That special part is about the people in our lives beyond our families, the opportunity to interact with people when they have need, and we have the opportunity to share what we have been exposed to and learned in a way that maybe in our hope of hopes might help them to heal. Service, because again, that's what we're called to do. The healing arts really are a calling. And unfortunately, sometimes we get so busy. And in this age of COVID, we get so stressed. And at the end of our rope, it is very, very easy to lose track of the privilege of being able to live in service. Nowadays, people will sometimes ask me, would you recommend for your children to go into healthcare if they ever shared that desire? And I would always say, number one, that's their decision. But if they asked my opinion, I would wholeheartedly say go into healthcare, because many of us are, feeling like, what we really need to do on this planet to make things better is to reach out and try and help people to the extent that we can. Those of us in healthcare, we get paid to help people. How many people have that opportunity? It's unbelievable. Yes, there are challenges. Yes, I don't like electronic medical records. Yes, there are lots and lots of issues in healthcare. But at the end of the day, we are called upon to help our sisters and brothers, and we actually get reimbursed for doing so. It's quite a remarkable place that we find ourselves in. And then lastly, if I might say, I speak of the Sabbath. I am not a very religious person. I have my own belief system. Again, I said I am Jewish, but I don't often attend services. I don't adhere to many of the things that I should do, frankly. But the one thing that I have done, and it started about now 23, 24 years ago, is I take the Sabbath. Now, I don't do it necessarily, and again, this is one of my failings. It's not from a religious perspective. It is from a save my life perspective. And I say that, and I'm meaning it, because I started this when our kids were very young, and I was a 7-day-a-week work guy. And my wife and I discussed that it just wasn't working out that way, and I needed to find a way to stop my work. And so we decided that Friday night at 5 o'clock until Saturday night, I would not work. Well, the first Friday, about 10 minutes to 5, I'm looking at all the work I have to do and the kids playing off to the side. And I'm like, this is not going to work very well. But I stopped at 5 o'clock, went to go play with the kids. But honestly, I was thinking about all the work. The next week, honestly, the kids were playing at 5 o'clock. And I was like, well, I'll just finish up a couple of emails and get it done. But again, my wonderful wife and I, we sat down together and said, it's got to be hard and fast. At 5 o'clock, I need to stop. And so I did that following week. And I was stressed. All I could think about was that if I could just use a little more time to get some more work done, I would do better. But it wasn't until the next week that I realized something that I often share with my patients, is that come 5 o'clock on Friday, I was free. I had made the commitment to myself that I couldn't do any more work. I was nervous about what my peers, my colleagues might think if I told them I wasn't available except for emergencies after 5 o'clock on Friday. And it was really, Randy, it was my stuff. They honored it. They valued it. They said, that's fine. If it's an emergency, we know how to get hold of you. But otherwise, that sounds great. It was me worrying about what folks would think rather than what it actually turned into. So since that time, I have stopped work at 5 o'clock on Friday, but I've only expanded the time that I don't do work until Sunday. And what I have found is that, Randy, you, me, all those we love and care about, and listeners too, we all have tons and tons of check boxes. But if we work 24/7, 365, we're still going to have work to do. In Chinese medicine, there's this wonderful adage that those who work and work and work and work, give and give and give and give, without taking time to replenish their energies, run the risk of becoming depleted. Now, the depleted state doesn't cause illness, but it can open the doorway to it. So all that I ask people to do, listeners to, is offer yourself the kindness that I learned from others about creating an opportunity to pause during your week. Not stop, but to pause, to rejuvenate, to gain back some of your energy, to put that in reserve so that you never become part of the problem as you are doing your best going out to try and make the world a better place. And Randy, I will leave you with that because, again, all these things that I've shared, they weren't learned on my own generally. I had wonderful mentors and teachers along the way, and I've just been, again, extraordinarily fortunate. And I really love the opportunity now to share it with your listeners. Thank you.
Russ, that's really profound, and I am so grateful that you were willing to come and share with us today. It's a great message, and I know it's going to mean a lot to many of our listeners. Before we go, I want to give you an opportunity to let our listeners know where they can find you personally, if you like, as well as publications and email addresses and Twitter handles or anything that you might like to share, because I'm confident that some of the people that hear this podcast are going to want to know more about you. So where should we look?
Thank you. Well, the first I would offer is to go to the Whole Health website. And so it's whole, WHOLE, health.org. And there you'll learn about our program, which really, when you break it down, you'll see empower, equip, treat, and connect. And that last part is about, creating community. And so I would love to be part of a larger community of folks who also feel the way that you and I do, Randy. And so if I might be, the entire Institute and all of our work is here in service to collaborate and partner with others who are of like minds and hearts. And so if I can be of service, my email address is rgreenfield@wholehealth.org. And I would welcome the opportunity to be in touch with you.
Dr. Russel Greenfield, a true pioneer in the world of integrative medicine. It's been a great pleasure. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Randy.
Thank you so much for listening with us today. Remember, you can get more information about our guests as well as hear them face my rapid-fire questions at our Patreon site. And while you're there, you can also subscribe to the podcast, give us a rating, and hopefully offer suggestions on what you'd like to hear in future episodes. Thanks very much to Ryan Jones, who composed and performs our theme music for us. That's all we have for now. So please be sure and fill your prescription for success with my next episode.